I'm delighted to be joined by former Peterborough United defender Adam Drury. Adam, first and foremost, obviously, in the situation we all find ourselves in at the minute, I'm guessing you're, struggling around the house, aren't you? Trying to think of something to do.
Well, yeah, I've had plenty to do, plenty of DIY tasks actually. In the middle of painting and painting kitchens, bathrooms, doing a bit of everything. So soon the lockdown's over, a bit of freedom would be great.
Yeah, because you obviously work at a football club, so obviously you know exactly what the situation is for everybody in the game at the moment. You're just waiting for the green light, I guess.
Yeah, because obviously I coach, and then at weekends I host a Legends Lounge at Norwich City. So obviously there's no football at the minute, and you can't have groups of people, so we can't train the lads we coach. So yeah, it's exactly the same as everyone else, and it's tough times, but hopefully they'll be over soon.
Yeah, I want to take you back to your days as a player at Peterborough United. It seems a remarkable thing to say because you still look relatively young, Adam, to be honest. But you actually made your debut in 1996, which, I mean, I was 14 at that time. So, I mean, I think, as far as I can recall, your debut was away at Watford in a 0-0 draw.
Was, yeah.
Do you remember anything?
I do, yeah. Well, actually, I think I came on the season before, at the very end of that season. I think it was Mickey House or away at Oxford, something like that.
Okay, yeah.
I think we were getting beat. But I just remember it because I was kind of in that crossover between managers and eras of football where sort of towards my later times at Peterborough was obviously health and all that sort of stuff and what you eat and all that. But I remember because I travelled to Bristol Rovers away in 95, around that time, like end of 95. And I was on the bench, but the night before, I remember having the pre-match meal as it was then. It was steak and chips with onion rings and a fried egg on top. I was like, I could get used to this, but then by obviously fast forward 3 or 4 years and it was pasta, all the sauces. But yeah, so I made the bench then and didn't get on. But it was a great experience. The end of that season came on away against Oxford. But I think they might have already been promoted. It was party time for them or whatever it was. I was just delighted to get on for 15 odd minutes. And the next year, started the game away at Watford and we drew 0-0, and that was where kind of it all started for me. And Peterborough gave me my chance, and it was Baz at the time who had a bit of faith in me.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, I think you featured in a number of games that season, including that ridiculous 6-3 against Wycombe, I think it was. I mean, was Barry someone that just gave you confidence, go out there and enjoy it? I'd imagine he didn't oversimplify things. It was a case of just go out there and do your stuff.
Yeah, it was. Well, when Baz came in, I'd obviously done my youth team days and been offered. There was me, Tom Meredith, Niall Inman, had all got contracts, but they were 1 year, not like sort of rolling contracts, month to month type things. And Baz came with this reputation, I think it was from Birmingham, of having a revolving door for players. So we were a little bit, obviously being young lads, thinking, we're going to not even get started. But he came in, did pre-season, and then from there, within, I don't know, a couple of months, got a 3-year contract because he liked what he'd seen, we'd done things properly. And then went from there, and he was harsh but fair. You knew where he stood with Baz, and I think it set me in good stead. Like, you don't get many managers like Baz anymore that sort of shouting and everyone's shouting and raving at you. You've seen the videos, but no, he wasn't. He was always first class for me, and he always said at the same time, if I did well, I'd get rewarded. So I had 2 or 3 new contracts in my time at the club, and at the same time, if someone bigger or a better move came along, he wouldn't stand in my way.
Was that important for a young player that you could go out and try and express yourself? Because I guess, if you're a striker, the pressure is on to score goals. If it's a goalkeeper, then obviously if you make a mistake, then it's going to sort of be talked about for ages. As a left back, I guess the most important thing was to have that communication with the people alongside you.
It was, yeah, and I was lucky in the fact that in my youth team, or as I went through my youth team days, I had Chris Turner there. So like, it was the Ken Charlery era, Mickey House, all that sort of. So I had a lot of older heads around, being a young lad coming into the team or around the team. Andy Edwards, people like that. Gary Breen was about as I sort of broke into the first team. And someone like Chris Turner, God bless him, he was brilliant for me. He took me day in, day out, 1v1 defending, was what I made a name for myself, being a good defender. And a big part of that was to him, Jim Walker, Mickey Housel. Then you had the likes of Keith Oakes as well. So even if you were injured, you didn't get a rest, and he did things properly. And then you had the senior pros as well, people like Dave Farrell, Tiles at the time, who'd played a lot of games. So it was, and on top of that, then Baz was there, and it was good grounding. There was no hiding place. If you did something well, they'd all tell you. If you didn't, they'd let you know. So,
but speaking to a lot of former players, speaking to a lot of former players, particularly ones that sort of came through youth ranks, one of the first things they said was that you needed to have the right attitude. And obviously, just saying what you said there, that you're prepared to sort of put the work in on the training ground, because often, players will just rely on ability, but you can't just rely on ability. You need everything else around it. Is that what you found when you were sort of breaking in, that you needed to make sure you worked really hard on the training ground?
It was, yeah, because at the time as well, there was the likes of Steve Welsh, and I remember watching him in pre-season, some of the running we were doing, and obviously he was, with his army background, he'd go through the pain barrier and his grit and determination. You had him, you had Tony Spearing, these sort of guys. Then you had the younger element at the time, which was like the Andy Fennells and that, who were before me breaking in, and Mark Tyler, to get into the team. And it was, you had to train properly. You still had to do things right to get in and around it. And that was what it was. It was all about your grounding. I went on loan to Stanford as well, with Steve Evans was manager, and there was a few older pros or ex-pros there, like Milton Graham, Darren Eadie, people like that. So that was brilliant for me to go and play non-league football, where people are getting paid, but winning and losing means something, because youth team football's great, but then you go, some people, it's their livelihoods. So it was tough. It wasn't easy. And I remember there's some games in Baz's early days where I got dragged at half time as a left back, which was never good for you. But it makes you or breaks you.
Yeah, it's funny because you speak to players nowadays, and they're, some are reluctant to go out on loan and experience sort of men's football, and just want to, play reserve team football and use that as a grounding to get into first team football. But particularly back then, I guess the local scene as well was thriving. So the opportunity to go out and, as you say, play for 3 points, play for livelihoods, it meant a lot to those people. And I guess that you learn more. Well, not more, but you learned a lot during that period of what it means to win games.
I did, yeah. And I think you've hit the nail on the head with the reserve team football. Back then, I remember you'd play almost a full season, whereas now there's odd games here and there. Back then, it was, right, you play, there was a game, first thing going on a Tuesday night, if you didn't play or you're on the bench, you played in the reserves on the Wednesday. And I don't think, obviously, the mentality's changed and the way football has changed, but for me, I loved it. You'd get some of the pros that maybe didn't want to be there, but once you start playing, you get on with it. You're coming back from injury, and you play against lads that were first team players a lot of the time, who maybe weren't getting game time, needed games, and it was a proper league. And I did it. That was a big part for me, the reserve team football and going on loan, because you could still make mistakes, you'd still get a rollicking if you didn't do things right. But at the same time, if you played well, that's part of the reason I got myself in and around the first team, because I was doing well in the reserves week in, week out.
And when you got into the team, particularly the season after you'd made your breakthrough, you became probably, I mean, I was a supporter, I still am a supporter, but I remember, watching the games, and you knew that you sort of looked across the team lineup and knew that Adam Drury would be left back. It was almost like it was the sort of consistent selection. If you weren't playing, there was a problem. Did you feel that you got into some kind of consistency and routine because you were playing week in, week out?
Yeah, I did. I got into a rhythm, and that sort of thing of feeling wanted, and the fans and everyone taking to you, being a young kid coming into the team. And the older pros are great as well. And it does, confidence, there's a big part of it, what goes on in your head. There's a big, because everyone's got ability when they get to a certain level at football, but it's how you think about things, how you get on with things. And I did then, and I think it's somewhere towards the end, that was probably 18, 19 around that time. I got myself a Ronaldo's gold card, so I knew I'd made it.
and I'd imagine you fully utilised that card as well.
I was going to say, yeah, there was those days with no camera phones and that sort of stuff. You could enjoy a night out without getting in any trouble.
It's funny because, as I say, you were sort of a fullback that wanted to get forward. I suppose that the modern era, everyone looks at a fullback and thinks, right, they've got to essentially be a wing back and do both roles. But you were someone that wanted to join in and get forward, and fitness obviously played a key role in that particular position, because without it, you really would struggle. Did you thrive on that opportunity to sort of link in with the midfielder and go past him?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was never. I wouldn't say it was ever a massive part of my game, because I was kind of brought up on the. I remember when Chris Turner, I mentioned already, saying we'd be up at the old golf course training, and after training, everyone else would go do shooting and crossing and finishing. I'd be doing 1v1s or 2v1s, like overloads against me. And to this day, I've said it in many an interview, that was the reason I became a footballer, a big part of it, because I got so good at defending, and it made one of my attributes. But back then as well, wingers, a lot of teams played 4-4-2 with 2 out-and-out wingers, so I'd have a right winger against me. So my job, first and foremost, before most games, would be, right, there's a report come in, the 2 wingers are their best players, stop the supply. So I was always taught, first and foremost, that was my job. And then as I got older and the game changed, you went and joined in a bit more. Probably is why my goal scoring record was so bad.
You did score. You did score a great one though against Hull, from recollection. I think the only reason
No one's ever seen this goal. No one's ever seen this. I talk about it all the time. I need to find it.
Well, the thing about that game is that I remember two things: A, the fact you scored, and B, I think it was a business thing. They're giving away a load of free tickets in the South Stand to like Thomas Cook and people like that. So there was quite a lot of people that side, and I think the goal. I was in London Road at the time, and the goal came down that side. And
Yeah, it did.
I remember thinking at the time, blimey, why can't he do that every week? But
That's what I thought. That's exactly what I thought, especially with my right foot. That's the only time I ever scored with my right foot.
Yeah, but it happened. Whether we can find it or not is a different thing. But that definitely sticks in my memory. And I guess that for someone that sort of come through the academy, that was a great feeling to score you. I'm pretty sure that was your first. Brentford. Yeah, Brentford away was the first.
Matty Everington made his debut that day. Mm-hmm. That was where Matty Everington at 16 made his debut, and then he went off with about 3 minutes left, and I went up to left wing and then scored. I think we were already relegated.
Yes,
but we won 1-0. We won 1-0. Yeah, so that was from about 2 yards out. Nearly missed it. Nearly put it over. But it was something that I wouldn't say bothered me, but nowadays, like you said, the game's changed. Fullbacks have to join in a lot more, and it was weird because towards the end of my career, obviously going from Norwich and then went up north to Leeds, I was known for being not a ball player, because that's probably me exaggerating, but I went up there and they said about having a decent left foot and stuff, but I was always sort of known before that as being an out-and-out defender, which is what I made a name for myself as. But no, if I ever got the chance to join in, then sure, I'd go forward. Just didn't get back that quick, probably. That was the reason.
You talked about Chris Turner and the work he did on a sort of a 1v1 defender. Can you remember some of the things he said? Because obviously, particularly when you're coming up against different types of wingers, you have to obviously adapt your game as a fullback. Ultimately, again, it's stopping the supply or making sure they don't get to the byline or make yourself look silly. And I guess different wingers will have different things. Was it a case of making sure you had the right balance to be successful as a 1v1 defender?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, footwork, all that sort of stuff. Don't dive in, stay on your feet. If you get a chance to lift them, as he used to say, lift them, put them in the air. And it was hard as nails. And he'd always remember, we'd be training, we'd be doing repetition after repetition. He'd always went, come on, one more round of toast, last round of toast. And I used to remember it. And as soon as you heard them words, you're like, thank God we're nearly done. But it was hard work, but it was brilliant. And it was all that sort of stuff, like getting the basics right. And it was a winger's job to go past you. I remember him always saying it's their job to beat you, not for you to get the ball off them. Their job is for them to go past you. So if you stand up and get in their way, it was simple but effective.
Of course, the game changed in terms of referees and everything. Back then, you probably could stick a winger in the stand and get away with it a little bit more. But probably nowadays, you do that, you got a yellow card after a minute. Did you have
I was going to say, yeah.
Did you sort of think to yourself, right? Is it going to be a tactical smash here, or am I just going to leave one on him so he knows I'm not just going to let you do whatever?
Yeah, it was. You're right. You could get away with it a bit more early days. Some of the tackles then, like you said, there'd be straight red cards now. Some of the tackles I saw in games, but it was kind of a little bit tactical in the stats factor. You'd let them know about. You knew certain wingers who you played against didn't like that. So after that, their first touch would be a bit looser. They'd give the ball away, it would bounce off them, or they wouldn't really want it. They'd stand closer to you. So it was all those sort of mind games, really. Those sort of things.
And as time goes on, you obviously had a wonderful relationship with David Farrell in terms of what he could do in front of you. From recollection, Faz was someone who would do his fair share of defending as well. I guess that was ideal for you as a fullback. You don't want a winger that's
exactly perfect. Yeah, I didn't have to go forward; just give him the ball. It's him, Matthew Everington, anyone like that. When you had a winger in front of you, a lot of time it was not don't get in their way, but they were so good 1v1 taking people on, just give them the ball and leave them to it. Obviously, Faz was lightning quick, both-footed. So it was a joy to play with people like that, just give him the balls. Matthew Everington, a lot more left-footed, but an out-and-out winger. Give him the ball and let him get on with it. Support where you can. And then sometimes you could do their job for them. They don't have to come back and defend. They could cheat a little bit and stay a bit higher up the pitch.
It was better then, that of Etherington and Farrell, or is it hard to compare because they're slightly different?
Yeah, I was going to say they were very different, I thought, in the way they played. Matty close control and dribbling skills, whereas Faz needed a bit more open space to run into, preferred the ball in front of him. But both brilliant players to play in different class in the way they played. Obviously had massive impact at Peterborough.
Mm. When we speak to the players from the era, the more recent era, obviously of promotions and playoffs, and what it was like in the build up to it, speaking to others involved in everything around the semi-finals against Barnet, it seemed like we're talking obviously in the year 2000. It seems like that you kind of were confident in the semi-finals with regards to Barnet, whereby the
Yeah.
final was obviously more an underdog thing. Is that how you felt as a player in preparation for the playoffs? That, you know, Barnet away to start, and then obviously the second leg at home, you were relatively confident you get the job done.
Yeah, I think there was a belief in the camp that by that point, no matter who we played, not just because it was Barnet, I think whoever we played, we fancied our chances. We were doing well. We got ourselves to the playoffs. But yeah, I think there was not an overconfidence or anything like that. But I think it felt like sometimes you get that feeling it's our time. You're on a roll, and the way the lads feel and the way you train and all that sort of stuff. The group, the way it was together, it was a great group. That things were going to go well, and it proved that way.
Hmm. It was strange, really, because when you analyse that season, everyone talks about a game of two halves in terms of a 90 minutes, but obviously everything seemed to be going pear-shaped in that season up until obviously January time. Obviously Wayne Turner came in, players left. Obviously, I think it was Matthew and Simon both left, didn't they? In around that time after a 5-0 defeat against Rotherham, I think it was that year. I mean, you couldn't have really foreseen, I guess, how it would end.
No, because I think I don't know if it was that season or not, but was it the end of that season as well? I think we might have gone to Chester or somewhere like that, and they actually got relegated.
Mm-hmm.
I think we might have beaten 1-0, and it was kind of, it's weird how, because that could easily have been us with the way we were going up until Christmas. You know, like the sort of form we were in and that sort of stuff. And Wayne Turner, someone actually you mentioned there, I remember him coming in, and I liked the way he was. He was good in terms of the way he wanted to play football and some of the hints and tips he gave, and the way he wanted the ball on the floor and trying to play. And I think maybe it just gave us a fresh energy. I don't really know. Obviously, losing players of Simon Davis and Matthew's ability was a huge loss. But then we just kicked on again. And then by the time you get on that sort of roll and you get to the end of the season, you have that belief thinking, you know what, this could be our time, you know, we've got a chance here. Though I didn't remember much of the final, so.
That Rotherham game might well have been rock bottom, because if I remember rightly, the Rotherham game happened. I think Simon and Matty both came off at half time and then were sold obviously a couple of days later. So from a fan perspective, having been there, I remember thinking, we're in real trouble here, because, you know, we've lost two of our better players. We've just got battered. But I guess in football, sometimes you can hit a level and you can only go really one way. And I guess the pressure was slightly off at that point. And as you say, Wayne came in and you got on a bit of a run.
It is, yeah, because sometimes it does work that way. You think, well, what else can go wrong, or what else can? You said there's only one way really to go. Then, and you sink or swim. And that's kind of what it was then. Like, we've got to kick on and get ourselves out of trouble or accept defeat, kind of thing. And we didn't. We went the other way, thankfully.
And the playoff game, the second leg, obviously Faz scored arguably the greatest hat-trick you'll see. And unfortunately for you, with your goal not appearing anywhere on YouTube, you can definitely see Faz's on there. I guess as a
he'll talk about him. Or he'll talk about him.
Yeah, I think for a period of time he was a teacher, and part of the education was to show the kids the hat-trick to show that he played. But I mean, as a teammate of his and played in that game, you must have been thinking, "Wow, what am I seeing here?"
It was, yes. Like I said, sometimes players can be unplayable, and it was one of those evenings where whatever he did, the goals he scored, the standard of them was like, wow. And it was just one of those things. Sometimes when it's your night or your time, that was it. And it's one of those nights that will be talked about like we are now, well into history. And he fully deserved it because he was unbelievable.
And it's strange, like most players would go out and really celebrate. And I think he went home and had a pizza at Park Farm in his house. Did any of the players sort of drink for him that night?
I can't really remember, if I'm honest. So probably, yeah, we did. I think we did, but obviously you always know you've got another game coming up. That's the thing. You haven't actually, although you've got to the final, you haven't won anything. So it's kind of like you're happy, but you've got to be a bit, well, we're going to be back training. We've got to prepare for the final. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me that Faz went over and had pizza.
Speaking to some of the players obviously involved in terms of the preparation, I think you went away to Jersey ahead of Wembley and had a bit of sort of team bonding at a spa or something along those lines.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
That doesn't sound like Baz preparation, that.
It worked. But no, yeah, we did. We had a few days away.
I mean, that was obviously a bit rare, because obviously we didn't have any money to really spend on things like that at the time. But as you say, it was vital, I guess, in terms of the team togetherness going into a final.
It was, and I think that was a big part of it. Like you said, at that point when we hit rock bottom that season, to go from there, that's when you find a bit about your players. If you've got a group that are together, or where everyone goes off in little splinters and talks behind other people's backs, or it's their fault, they didn't end up pulling everyone together and then getting on that run.
Mm. As you mentioned, yeah, as you mentioned, you can't remember much of the final. You obviously went off with concussion. I mean, I suppose looking back now, you can obviously relive it and all that kind of stuff. Did you remember anything about the game at that point?
Yeah, I remember the downpour and going out to the pitch, and at that point thinking, are we even going to play? Because there was puddles on the pitch, and thinking all that to get here, family and friends, everyone here. But then I remember I was going in for the header. There was a ball down the channel, and I should never have headed it. I put my head down too low and got kicked in the forehead. And I remember straight away feeling the blood trickle down. I thought, oh, I'll be all right. Got up, and Darlington won a corner. And I lined up for the corner, and Tiles obviously was in goal. Mark Tiles said to me, Ad. And I was like, what? The corner's that side. And I was facing the wrong way. I didn't even know where I was being taken from. So he had to literally physically turn me round because I stood near him or on the near post. And he said then to one or two of the lads, and I think we carried on for a little bit longer, and I was just in a daze. So they obviously, that's when I came off. I was gutted to come off. It was the right thing to do.
Were you trying to protest? Were you sort of saying, like, I'm fine, let me play? Or was it a case of knowing that you were in the wrong place?
I was, but I didn't know. They probably looked at my eyes and thought, yeah, he doesn't even know who's looking at. So that's why the reason was to come off. And it was the sensible thing to do. That's obviously with head injuries and stuff like that.
Yeah, and obviously Andy Clark went on to score the winner. Is when people look back at the final, they probably, just remember the goal, remember the celebrations, remember the fact it rained, but it wasn't El Clasico in terms of the game itself. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about winning and getting promotion, and that's what you achieved.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head, because that is exactly what it's about. Player finals and things like that are brilliant, but you don't want to be the loser. Like that's the whole point of it. The whole season, because your season extends for 2 or 3 weeks, a month longer. The ultimate aim is to win the final, and thankfully we did that down to Clarkie's goal. Because even in the game, although I don't remember lots of it, I don't think we were great in it either anyway. So,
I mean, what was Clarkie like? Because I remember obviously interviewing him, and without being disrespectful to him, he wasn't the how can I put it? He wasn't the sharpest tool in the box, but he was a pure finisher in terms of what he could provide. And obviously, he came from Wimbledon and scored goals. I mean, I was watching Premier League years the other year, and I think there was a stat on BBC. I think he won Player of the Month for the Premier League. So he came with a big sort of pedigree, and really was successful for us.
He did, yeah. He had a knack as well, yeah. Exactly like you said, of scoring goals, being right place at the right time. I'm trying to think of the forwards at the time when I was there. You had over my spell, you had likes of himself, who obviously won the player final for us. You had Leo McKenzie, who did brilliant. Kim Kenny was there at the time. So decent set of forwards that were around at the time. Andy Fennell, who unfortunately I thought at the time would go on to do a lot more than what he did when he broke into the team. But yeah, Andy Clark was one of those ones where if you just sit him in training a lot of the time, you wouldn't have thought he'd play like he did on a match day, but you often find that with forwards. They like it in the big stages and they turn up.
He did come up with arguably the best excuse as well for failing a drugs test, if my memory serves me correctly. I remember seeing the front page of the paper with a cake he'd eaten. It was just you couldn't have described it any better in terms of Andy Clark coming up with that, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It was probably the perfect fitting for him. Yeah.
In terms of after that promotion, was there rumours at any point while you were at that level about a move, or was it the case of when the move eventually came for you that it was completely out of the blue?
No, there'd been a few teams that had shown an interest, and Baz was great with me. He had always told me. I don't know whether the moves weren't right for him or me, but he did tell me when there was clubs interested. But yeah, Gillingham at the time, I think, were in League One. They'd been having a look. Ipswich had a look. I think there was one or two others, but nothing was ever concrete. It was never where I felt it was a good move for me or for the club, because it had to be right. Baz had always said that it had to be right for Peterborough as well, because the club didn't have loads of money, like you said at the time. So it had to be like when Simon went, because Simon had gone, Matthew Evanson had gone, before that Billington and McKeever had both gone. So there was players. I always thought Mark Tyler was going to go, but never did. He's still got the same hairstyle now as what he had back then as well.
Yeah, and he's still just as boring as well.
Yeah. So he never moved, and his hair's never moved either. So, but no, and it was one of those things where I always wanted to play as high as possible. If that was going to be with Peterborough, brilliant. and there was rumours, but it was kind of that thing where I was just getting on with my football. I was loving playing. I was playing regular first team football. One of my great good moments was we played Chelsea in the FA Cup. I know we got beat 5-0, but that'll always stick with me because I remember at the end of the game, I'd played centre half and I'd played against Zola, which obviously, when you're a lower league team, you get to play one of the big boys. It's like a dream. And I played centre half. And I remember at the end of the game going up to him and saying, "Could I have his shirt?" And he went, yeah, you can get it inside. And I thought, he's done me, he's blagged me, he's just going to go in. Went inside, he'd gone in their dressing room. So I was in the shower getting changed. We all getting changed, got changed. Just come out of the shower and Baz went, "Oh, someone here to see you." And Zola had come in with his shirt to find me and give me his shirt. And I was like, "Oh, brilliant." I couldn't believe it, got his shirt. And then he actually made a point of saying, "No, I want yours." So I had to go through all the kit boxes to get, I don't know what he did with it. Like, it'd probably just be nice to get rid of it. But, it's just one of those moments when you play against elite level players that really sticks with you. It's probably one of the main shirts that I've got now, because I don't really have them up anywhere, but it's one that I think of when I think about players I played against. They were the memories at Peterborough, things like that, where how good it is.
He's probably got your shirt framed in his room at home.
I'm sure he has. Yeah, I'm sure he has.
It would be absolutely amazing if he can actually remember where it is. But that was that green kit as well, wasn't it? So it probably wasn't the best one to display.
I was going to say, yeah. I'd be amazed if he can remember that game, let alone the shirt.
Can you remember anything about? I mean, as you say, I remember going to that game, and I remember it being a green kit. And I know, Gilly obviously comes back quite frequently, and there's a picture still in the tunnel of him looking. Well, he looks like he has no idea what's going on with Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank sort of somewhere near him. And what kind of experience was that to go to Stamford Bridge? Because you knew you were on a hiding to nothing.
Yeah, of course you are. They're the sort of games where you go to and anything you can do, but you just want to test yourself against the best players. That's what it's for. You want to play against the best. And when you enter the FA Cup in the first round, as you do when you're a lower league team, you want to get to the third round and get a big boy. And we were lucky to do that. I don't know if that was the year we played Oldham. I think, talking about it again, Tiles had an unbelievable game.
I remember that game. I remember going to that game on the supporters bus, and it was... I remember coming out thinking, God, we've got Chelsea away. And it was just down to Tiles. I can't remember who scored, but it was just literally down to Tiles.
I think that was the only time I've ever seen Swansea give someone a 10 in a newspaper, because normally someone plays unbelievable and they get 6. They did all right.
Did you ever get a 10?
No chance. I was lucky if I got a 7 off Swansea. I used to hammer him every week.
I can't believe he didn't give you a 9. Surely he must have given you 9 for some game.
No, he must have given me a half decent mark somewhere along the line. I spoke to him obviously once I'd moved and retired. I spoke to him a couple of times. I said to him, "You're always so tight." All the lads used to wait to see him, and you'd think, "Oh, we've won 3-0," and you get a 6. Like, what? I can't have been that bad.
He stopped doing he stopped doing the marks now, because there was an era where they threw him into the water at Woodlands. I don't know whether that was your era, but I
should have done that sooner then, shouldn't they? Should have done it sooner.
There we go.
But yeah, that night, that cup run, just because how well, probably as a goalkeeper performance, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. To get us to when you've got Chelsea away in the next round. Tiles was unbelievable.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously the clubs that were in for him. Obviously, you mentioned Ipswich were one of the clubs. Just imagine if he'd have gone there. Looking back.
Well, it was one of those things. It was a proper interest. And I think then they ended up signing a lad called, I think his name was Gary Crofts instead. Around the time, I don't know if they couldn't agree a feel. They were umming and ahhing and weren't sure. But like I said, Baz at that point was brilliant. He'd keep me in the loop, tell me what was going on, whether they'd agreed a fee or anything like that, and he never had. And like I said, I was happy. I was loving my time at Peterborough and enjoying playing. So it was never one of those things where I desperately wanted to leave. There was a spell where I thought I was getting to the point where everyone talks about you as like an 18, 19-year-old youngster. Then you get to sort of 20, 21, everyone starts to think, well, maybe you're going past that a little bit now. You've not missed the boat, but no one's come in, so... But no, at the same time, I had a great grounding of where to play my football. A place where I loved playing, gave me my chance in football. And I got on brilliantly with everyone at the club and the fans.
So ultimately, it became the right sort of time to depart when you eventually did. You mentioned the age you were at, and you probably, as you say, got a bigger grounding as you could possibly get, playing week in, week out. And it was about the next stage for you then. It
was, yeah. And it wasn't, I think Peterborough in more recent years, with more investment, obviously different chairman, and the way he's back to the club, or the way he talks. I follow him on Twitter. I don't actually know him. I've spoken to him on Twitter a couple of times, but I actually really like the way he comes across. But at the time when I was there, it was kind of I'm not saying Peterborough aren't a selling club, but back then they were. They had to keep things going. So if someone came in, it was almost like as long as it was the right sort of money, you had to leave. But it had to be the right move. And Baz spoke to me. I think we had a game away on a Tuesday night, and it got called off. We were on the way to it, and it got called off. And he called me down the front of the bus and said, "Look, Norwich have come in. We've agreed a fee." And I was like, "Right." And he said, "Have a bit of time to think about it and let me know." And it was at that time. Spoke to obviously family, friends, and obviously having been released from Peterborough at the age of 15, from Norwich at the age of 15, it seemed like the time to go back. And I knew they didn't have a left back at the time, so I knew I was going in to play, which was a big thing. I wasn't going to go anywhere to not play. That's not because I think I deserved to play, but I wanted that chance. I didn't want to go somewhere and not have a chance, just be back up all the time. So I went there and it worked out perfect.
Just talking about some of the players that you obviously had in the dressing room during your Posh time, I've asked this to a number of people in terms of the best players they've played with, and I'll ask you that as well. But in terms of banter, because you played in an era where banter you could get away with a little bit. Obviously nowadays,
Yeah.
nowadays probably some of the things you came up with wouldn't be allowed. There'll be PFA involved and all sorts. But back then, who was the big big joker within the dressing room?
Well, early doors when I first was there, sort of coming through, just finished youth team, first year pro, you had likes of Tony Spearing, who was non-stop. Lee Power, I remember him turning up one day in a limo, and he made out as if he was getting out the back of it, as if he was being driven to train in a limo, but it turns out it was part of his business, and he was driving it and getting in, climbing through to the back and getting out of it. Who else was there then? I'm trying to think, obviously Ken Charlie was there. Then it kind of moved on. You had the likes of Matty Gill as he came through into the first team. Derek Payne. I think there was one or two others, and then from that, as I left, I'm trying to think who it would have been at the time I left. You had Stevie Castle was there, who was Adam Banter also, but he was another one. Stevie Castle I should give a mention to. You had some of him and Andy Edwards, the two guys that I looked up to as I was playing, sort of the older guys in the team that were brilliant. So Stevie Castle, I remember being terrified of him when I first got in the team. Wherever he said went, if I had to throw him the ball, I was throwing the ball. But he was another one that was brilliant because he as much as he was like that, he'd praise you and help you through games. And playing my side of the pitch, I remember he had a knee operation. I think he had his cartilage done. And he played 2 days later. I was like, wow, now that is a football warrior for you who'll run through brick walls. So there was a good mix of banter in the squads.
Yeah, were you on the wrong end of anything? Anything sort of, I mean, take you to the edge where you thought, what on earth did they? What's those guys got? I mean, I've been, down the years, it happens more to people like me than it does players nowadays because I'm not represented by a union. But I think I'd imagine back then you were probably thinking, oh God, what's he going to do to me as I walk in here?
Yeah, I remember the days of Fred Barber and Oaksy when they were around. Like that was my really early days. Thinking I don't think I had a birthday for 3 years because I didn't want them to know. Because if it was your birthday, anything could happen. So yeah, it was. Like you said, you have to be careful what you say, otherwise you get the PFA involved.
And in terms of best players, I mean, you played with so many best players down the years and different types of players, and sometimes it's hard to say he was the best player I played with because he played in different positions. But from your point of view, what players stood out in terms of ability during your time?
Gary Breen did when I was obviously a bit younger then, but he was so cultured as a centre back. Like in an era when it was defenders were defenders and it was head it and kick it. He was comfy on the ball, tried to play out. Simon Davis, obviously I knew him growing up as a kid and coming through youth teams and that, but just so elegant to watch on the ball, technically brilliant. I mentioned Matty Etherington. Trying to think who else would have been in there. Probably Simon Davis would have been the one that stood out. Mm. You could see why the clubs that were interested in why he went on and did as well he did. Matty did as well, but I think Simon was probably the one that stood out the most for me. And his goalies, Tiles was the only goalie he ever played while I was there.
Yeah, well, he to be fair, he still hasn't retired because he doesn't want to say the R word. And just final question, because it's interesting. Obviously, people always compile, the best 11s, the best Posh 11 ever, and you always, without a shadow of a doubt, are in at left back. And whether that's because we've not had him any since, I don't know. But it must be nice to sort of be recognised by the supporters as being the best left back. And why do you think that is? Why do you think people sort of gravitate to your performances? It's a hard question.
Maybe because yeah, cheers for that. Maybe it's because the age I was, and obviously coming in as a defender at left back. like, I'm not saying it's easy because scoring goals is one of the hardest things you can do. But if you score goals, people tend to remember it. So maybe at left back, it was kind of because I was consistent. So they took to me. They knew what they were going to get week in, week out. Because I think as well as I'm not saying I did brilliantly. I thought I did well, but I think maybe as I got a little bit older and more experienced, I probably got a bit better as well. But I think it was more the fact that I was a young lad coming in at a time when the team was changing around quite a bit. Obviously with Baz taking over and players changing and that sort of stuff. That maybe that bit of stability with me playing most weeks, week in, week out, after I got myself settled in the side.
That's a good answer, to be fair. It's very, very concise. I suppose I'll ask a supplementary.
Or I was just the best left back there. Maybe that's what it was.
That could be it. I'll ask a final supplementary question then. What makes a good left back? What would you say to your left back now? You obviously work with the sort of scholars at Norwich now. What would you say to someone in your position in terms of their development?
Good question. I think from my point of view, it'd always be first and foremost you're a defender. Because I think you hear a lot of nowadays, he's great going forward but can't defend, which is kind of can be someone like Ashley Cole. I think for me, Paolo Maldini were the two people as left backs I always looked at and thought, wow, they can do everything. So I think my biggest thing is always work hard. That was one thing I always did. Like I said, from someone like a Jim Walker, Chris Turner, them sort of people instilled that in me. Coaches as I was younger, always work hard. Don't be afraid to make mistakes is another thing, because you only learn from them. I remember some of the games I spoke about early on, my Peterborough days, getting dragged at half time because I was having a stinker, maybe diving in or not doing things properly. It's all about learning from them. That's what it'd be, learn from your mistakes. And no one will ever, I think if people know you're trying to do things right for the right reasons, people won't criticise you. Or they shouldn't.